Switching gears to politics a little bit. In 1957, Khrushchev said, "Your grandchildren in America will live under socialism." What is your view in 2017?
Well, I don't think we are. I don't think we are. That was the famous, he said that at the famous kitchen debate with then Vice President Richard Nixon. The United States won World War II not because we became like the Nazis, but because of American values and American courage. That's how we won World War II. And we put together an alliance that still stands today, NATO. We had the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe after we won the war. We did all of these things with our partners who were with us winning World War II, and by making friends of our enemies, Germany, Japan, some of our strongest allies today. And that is how American democracy has survived, not by going it alone, but by working with our partners who shared American values. It's still happening, and that is still what is in place here today.
What responsibility do citizens of the United States have in keeping the press functioning and free and accountable?
There are two ways to differentiate between a totalitarian society and a democracy like the one we have. First, in a totalitarian society, the only source of news is the government. Second, in a democracy like ours, citizens have access to independently gathered, accurate information that they can compare with the government's version of events. And then the citizens decide what to do about that. If there were no other reason for having a free and unfettered press, that is reason enough. And that's what we do. That's what our job is. We're not the opposition party, as some would have it. We're not trying to run the government. Our role is to simply ask questions. Politicians present a message. Our only job is to find out if the message is true, and if so, how does it impact on the people? How does it impact on the governed? What does it mean? That's what we do. We do that by asking questions, and I think when that's done correctly, it's a very noble thing. I know this, it is absolutely crucial to a democracy. Unless citizens have independently gathered information, they can't make informed decisions about what they want their government to do and what they want it to be. That's what makes all this work. And that's why when anyone, a foreign agent or someone within the government or some politician aspiring to be in the government tries to undermine a free press, it's a dangerous thing, and they're undermining democracy.
Thank you. Perhaps you can help me phrase this question better. It has to do with discretion and how to make sure that you decide what's the public's right to know versus if there are some things that the government would rather keep confidential. Talk to me about that process.
Well, there's always a tension, and there's often a disagreement. My rule has been always, if this is something that is going to impact in a negative way on people's lives, and the only way to get that news out is to publish something that the government may have classified, then I think the government I think the press has an obligation to do that. But you have to be very, very responsible in how you go about this. And the reporters I know in the mainstream media always are. I mean, I can remember once when I was covering the Pentagon, and a general who trusted me let me read some information that was, by the government's definition, classified. And I looked up at him and I said, "Are you sure you meant to show me this?" And what it was a list of the bombing runs that the B-52s were going to make the next day. Well, if I had published that, it would have put the lives of every pilot in danger. And of course, I didn't. And he said, "Oh my God, I thought I was," he just gave it to me by mistake. Well, no reporter who has any responsibility is going to publish something like that. And that's always been my rule. We never should ever publish something that will put American lives in danger. But you have to also understand, and anybody in Washington who's been here a while understands this, sometimes the government will classify things just because it's embarrassing to them. I remember one of my favorite stories of all time. I was walking through the Pentagon. There's a commercial mall in the basement of the Pentagon, and there are commercial stores down there. And I was walking down there one day. I think I'd gone to get a hamburger or something in the days when I was covering the Pentagon. I look up at the Pentagon bookstore, and there was a long line of people lined up in the bookstore. And I thought, well, wonder what that's about. And some were in uniform, some were not. And so I just wandered in to see what it was. Well, I walked in there, and on sale in the commercial bookstore in the Pentagon was, of all things, the Pentagon Papers, which a commercial publisher had published. Now, upstairs in the Pentagon, these were under lock and key and still classified top secret. I ran and got a camera crew, went down, interviewed the folks in line. We did a story about it on the evening news, and Walter Cronkite said to me, he called me after the show, and he said, "Bob, if you hadn't had pictures to go with that story, I wouldn't have believed it."
Is this April 1st?
Exactly. But that's an example. I mean, of sometimes the Pentagon, classifies things, or all government does, to cover up mistakes. And in those cases, I think it's justified.
The cover-up is always worse.
Yes.
So the AMA has the Hippocratic Oath. What's the journalist oath?
To tell the truth, to understand that the politicians have a message, and our job is to find the truth. Both are honorable endeavors, but they're different. Our job is to make sure the governed understand what the governors are doing. People have asked me over the years, are all reporters biased? Well, sure. Everybody has a personal point of view. But what reporters do is they're trained professionals, and they're able to separate their personal views from their professional responsibilities. And I think for the most part, I think that's what most reporters do. Politicians often have an agenda. I think the agenda that most reporters have is to get the story, get it right, and get it before your competitor gets it. I don't think most reporters' agenda goes beyond that.